I'd like to call the King George County Board of Supervisors with the Economic Development Authority to order. Ms. Gallimore?
I would like to call the order the EDA meeting.
Alrighty. Public comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comments so it can be properly included in the record. Is there anyone that'd like to make public comments? Is there anyone online, Mr. Dine?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll close public comments. We'll go to discussion items. Mr. Smollett?
Mr. Chairman, members of both boards, thank you for coming together for this joint meeting. So it is my understanding that there needed to be, the request for a joint meeting was made to really open the communication channels between both boards. And that's really why we're here, sitting around these tables to try to figure out how can information come from this board to this board and vice versa. Really an EDA board and a board of supervisors should be working in tandem with one another. And then just wanted to, I've put some points of discussion down on the agenda. Some of them came from EDA chair, some of them in discussions with the chairman of the board of supervisors when we set this agenda. So the point, and I'm going to stress this, the point is just to get us to learn how to communicate, learn what each other's doing, and learn, maybe the roles and responsibilities of each board. So I'm going to skip down to the second bullet point here. So we're not going to get into the details of this. I haven't gone through the details. I've attended one EDA board meeting so far. But just for the knowledge of anybody watching in the two boards here, I think the EDA is going to start to look at their investments and their grant program and some of their financial reporting. Monthly treasurer's reports being approved. How much money is in the account? So there should never be any question of what's there, what we've earned, what we have to spend. So that's all that really is. These topics will be developed at and refined at a later date as I work with the EDA board. But I just wanted to let everybody know these are some big major topics that we are discussing. They've come up in conversation, not really for this meeting, but just for your knowledge. Third bullet point going down, point of contact for economic development projects. I had some communications with the EDA board after the first meeting. And right now the county is without a specific economic development director. So, with my background, looking at the board of supervisors, Matt, can you run point on economic development for us? And until we figure out what the permanent path will be. Is it you? Is it somebody else? That decision has not yet been made. And I just wanted to open some dialogue between the two boards about economic development projects coming in, and trust me, every homeowner, every small business owner who's got an idea. I know Ms. Graves and I sat with a gentleman for 40 minutes, maybe 30-40 minutes earlier this week. Wanted to do an Airbnb. Great opportunity. But I see these as that's maybe another position in economic development, maybe not a director or somewhere along those lines, who can field and filter out and answer some of those questions. When it comes time for maybe larger economic development projects, ones that come from the state, or other projects that we're working on right now, I just want to have a defined path forward and a process. If you want structure and you want results, you need a process in place. If there's no process in place and nobody understands how to move forward, you're going to get results all over the page. And that's not what we want. I don't think collectively as King George County, that's not what we want. We need to provide a united front, to these individuals looking to invest, $1,000, $1 million, $1 billion in the county here. It's all important to us. So, with that being said, moving forward, reaching out to these companies or, whenever they say, and again, I can't remember if I told the EDA this, whenever I had my discussion, communication between the board and staff members. Now, I know I work for the Board of Supervisors. I don't work for the EDA board. You're appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So it's this triangle that we have. And, you know, for effective communications, I use my hourglass analogy. An hourglass, there's a pinch point in that hourglass. Communication from the Board of Supervisors to staff, every grain of sand goes through that one little pinch point. That pinch point is the county administrator. And then communication coming from staff up to the Board of Supervisors, staff, department head, county administrator, board. You know, so that, you know, what I've learned is an effective way to communicate, rather than people going off, tackling their own ideas. If we have a single point, a single funnel, I think that's going to lead to process. Process leads to knowing what everybody, yeah, exactly. So, you know, I'm not going to belabor this point. I just wanted to maybe, you know, see if there's some discussion among both boards, you know, on the best process moving forward for, you know, points of contact for ED projects. And I'll open the floor up for discussion.
So I have a question. So we don't get reached out to for development of any type. So that they always reach out to the Economic Development Office. We find out through the same reports that are shared with the Board of Supervisors. However, at this point, we have been communicating to Rome. Do you want us to continue to do that? They sent you the message about the railroad. They want us to reach back out. Now that we have somebody, are you going to be that point of contact? Are you going to call them and finish up what we're doing? Or do you want me to do that and keep you in the loop? And moving forward, until somebody is named, are we doing all of our communication through Roan, or send it to you and you send it to Roan?
Yeah,
So we'll talk about the pinch point. He's the pinch point, so it goes through him. So then it can go down the road, and if it goes up from road, then it goes to him, and then it comes to us. So he is the EDA guy right now.
So will you reach back out to that railroad company and start getting that information?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to make an introduction to you, to them, to finish up the project that we are working on currently?
if you could make an introduction, and I think, and I've looked at a lot of documents, I believe that was accepted by a deed of gift, that rail spur. I don't have the document in front of me, but if you could make the introduction, but I know, I believe that's what I saw when I was doing some research. So I've started working on it. But yes, if you could make an introduction and then run everything through me, and if there's, you know, certain things that I need Ms. Graves or somebody else for, I will farm that out to them and follow up with them for the appropriate response back to the EDA board.
Yeah, this was for a quote on doing maintenance on the spur. We've already taken care of the spur, but if we can deed that as a gift to somebody else, you guys like a gift? That would be really great because it's costing us a lot of money. So, okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You have a comment, sir?
I had a comment. I had a question, more or less.
Go ahead.
The things that the EDA are working on, are there minutes with like a list and things like that of everything that's being worked on? And
Yes, we have minutes from every meeting, but we really currently aren't working on anything other than finishing up the railroad work that we were required to do from a failed inspection in January. That and our financial moving money over into an LDIP, which is in process right now.
so you said there are minutes from every meeting, but for like these telephone conversations and things you were just referring, like you were going to refer to Mr. Smolnick to make the call to the railroad and stuff.
I sent him an email forwarding the email that they sent to me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And basically what I was asking is, did the EDA or members of the EDA, I'm new to this, but if they're having conversations with these people, are they documenting it so that that information is available?
We report it out in each of our meetings and our comments, just like you guys do at the very beginning of your meeting, and report out. And then if we are making progress throughout the month, like on some of the stuff that Mr. Minor had left, that he had given me as the point of contact to finish, that Mrs. Graves and I had both, you know, with the railroad and a couple of other things, I send out intermittent emails out to the board to let them know what progress has been made. So like today, all of the purchase agreements for total machines purchased for property that we had has finally got completed. And so I sent that out so that they're aware now and not having to wait an additional 2 weeks. Then I will announce it again, so it's at our meeting on public record that we have completed that sale.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
So,
And if
my,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
go ahead, you can have the floor.
Okay. If I may, to answer your question, so there are some tactical things we're finishing up, which Ms. Delmore just mentioned. We have been talking about some strategic planning and opportunities as well, which kind of is one of the reasons we really wanted to have a conversation like this, because as part of the process, the strategic plans, we need to flow from where the Board of Supervisors is going, and then we take that information and put it into economic development goals and objectives. And so that's one of the things that we had, and I know it's a topic for later, but that's one of the things that we wanted to get started on, recognizing that we were should have done it last year really. But we didn't, because there was an election in November, and we wanted to wait till the new board got seated to have the conversation. So there's lots of things that we're ready to move out on, but I think the communications and having these type of meetings and being able to share these ideas is a great first step.
So, some of my concerns are the EDA, when a business first has an interest in the community, quite often they reach out to the EDA. Well, they should.
They don't though,
but-
they don't reach out.
So, but after that has occurred, the way it should occur, and then it comes to the board for some type of decisions on zoning, performance agreements, all that stuff like that. Once it gets to the, as I call it, the deal, then the EDA has done their job. So they really shouldn't re-engage, especially when the Board of Supervisors is in negotiations. They can mess up our posture in those negotiations if members are out doing things. The board has already set up a negotiation with the Amazon, and so that's the way it should stay.
And we did not interfere in that in any way from an EDA perspective. I know what you're referring to. That was from two individuals asking a question. We were invited in to speak with them. Amazon, not so much. Berkwood, yes, they gave us a tour, which was really cool, and did that with other supervisors in the room. So we were invited to that because we asked a question.
I
But we
understand
would
that.
never discuss or try to negotiate in any way on the EDA's behalf. Local businesses, people coming in, do not come to us first, other than, I will say, the solar farm did give us a presentation recently, but would have thought that you guys would have already had that presentation, but there was no negotiations or anything. They're just giving us information. Same thing for what was the housing that was down by Indulgent, what was that called? They came and presented to us, but they had already presented to the planning commission. They were just trying to let us know, and we signed a letter of support for them. I can't think of what their name is. Walnut Hill. Yes, thank you, Walnut Hill.
So once it gets into the negotiation phases of the process, the EDA really doesn't have an interest in that. So like, even though Birchwood or Amazon or whoever invited you to that for a tour, knowing the negotiation status of the county, that was not proper. So we need to follow the rules. So a lot of times, builders and companies will come to you all to try to smooth us, which is not really the process the way it works. They're circumventing the planning commission. They're driving a wedge between you all and us, trying to get their projects, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
So I agree 100% with you that we should not interfere with negotiations once they're underway. And so that's not an issue, I don't think, well, not for me.
Not
at what I will say though is, and I think this has a little bit to do with lack of communications between the boards, is towards the end of last year, we kind of got caught making decisions on signatories for things that we had not had, in my opinion, ample opportunity to have discussions with the Board of Supervisors. And that was not all of you, right? It was a different board. I don't believe we had ample opportunity to ask questions and have conversations that allowed us to make an informed decision in a way I would have liked to. Now, we did take the time to sit down, and we made people sit there for over an hour while we read the document and then ask questions and convinced ourselves and got the data we needed to have that conversation. Since then, there's been a lot of conversations and questions, data, information flowing in the community. We do get asked questions from citizens in the county. I personally prefer to give fact-based discussion. So since we had questions, we were asking the questions, and we went to the people that had the documentation that then allowed us to get the facts required to answer the questions we were getting. It was nothing to do with the negotiation, and it was not part of
the document and the discussion. It's all in public. So the performance agreement, the decision on Birchwood, the decision by the board to negotiate is all public.
I agree.
There's no more information to go get. It's all right there. So, you know, if that doesn't work very well for bringing business to the county when you have those type of entities happen. And you're right. Last year, you all were asked to sign a document that you did not have enough time to review. And I totally disagree with that, but you see what the position that you put in.
Well, I will
So-
tell you, I did read all 31 pages,
Right.
and I did understand.
But you didn't have time to
No, I
actually-
had it a week ahead of time. I did have time to absorb it and ask the questions I needed. I am also on another board that makes it where the questions that I was asking is important. What they shared with us has less to do with about King George and more about what they were doing in other places. So understanding the 2-for-1 grant, that's across the board. I wanted to understand that thoroughly. Kathy really did try to explain it to me, and, you know, I wasn't getting it. I wanted to know the math. So I wish to somebody who could explain the math of all of that that's part of that infrastructure grant that is in the performance agreement. As a citizen, and keep in mind, we did this as private citizens, not part of the EDA. The EDA was not aware until the last meeting when we asked if we could come and share that information as EDA members.
So I have to caution you, so I'm on the Board of Supervisors, you're on the EDA. When I go to Food Line, I'm still on the Board of Supervisors. You don't take off the hat and go to Food Line. So you're always on the EDA.
But
So,
they knew we were there as private citizens,
yes, but so.
or on the board
You
that we
have
were
to
on.
be careful with companies posing one way and end up being another way. Was Curry Roberts there?
Yeah.
Okay, he's the one that architects the agreement.
Right, he was
Right.
able to explain.
So
it.
he shouldn't have been there. And you all got a tour, and then at the end, were you all asked if you agreed with the project?
No,
But you see how that could be a conflict?
but we never put ourselves in that position, nor did we say that the county would do anything differently or anything else. I mean, we
We're-
were not there to negotiate. We went
We're
to
asking
get
you not to
answers.
put yourself in that conflict.
So I do think, this is where a process To have these conversations ahead of time will be helpful. I do think better comms between the boards would be helpful. So I do think moving forward, there's things we could all do differently to work these situations so we don't have the perceived conflict. And I think this is a great first step in having a joint meeting to get us going that direction.
So in January, there was a little bit of chaos, well, a lot of chaos. And so there's 5 of us trying to figure things out. And we figured them out. But it took a little bit of bumps and bruises along the way. So you all, have to take some of those bumps and bruises from us because there was no leadership, you know what I mean? So now we have leadership and things are completely different. So I guess our conversation is that you go through him, we go through him, and everybody knows everything.
We are excited that he is here and that he is taking all that information. You don't know how excited I am to get 40 hours a week back that I was spending doing things that I knew nothing about. Railroad things. Who knew all the stuff that goes on? By the way, we still need that pipeline. You can arrange that.
Well, not only that, I think Mr. Smolnick would admit he's probably seen more of us over the last couple of weeks than he probably even wanted to see. But so we agree. We think he's a great addition as county administrator. He's got a wealth of information, his economic development. So yeah, we're all excited moving forward.
So, Ms. Bender, did you have a comment?
Yes, I was going to have a comment. I mean, one of the biggest things we're talking about here is making sure we open lines of communication and be better overall, which I think we've established already. And with Mr. Smolnick and his vast experience in the EDA world and some major scores in the EDA world, I think that's going to help us to have a good point of contact. So I think moving forward, I think we need to discuss about how we should be as a board together moving forward. And I know Mr. Smolnick had some ideas.
So, Mr. Davis, I don't. No, I'll defer to you. Okay. So, some of those ideas, and I agree, this is the right first step. EDA meetings are not televised. So unless you're in that audience, it's kind of hard to understand what's going on at those meetings. So I send weekly reports. This board knows everything that goes on, throughout the week at a staff level. So I am now your conduit for those EDA, meetings as far as main what was discussed, projects or anything like that. So, the EDA board has now become part of my weekly report to the board. And, and again, EDA meetings are open to the public. So anybody can come, sit. If the chair likes, they can open floor for comment. It's your choice. But I don't know how many people have ever attended EDA meetings. But that's one thing I encourage these board members, if you have an opportunity, come and sit. Especially, and again, whenever these agendas are set for the upcoming board meeting, one of these board members, Mr. Smolnick, what's on the EDA meeting? Use me as that conduit. Here's what's on. If something piques their interest or whatever, they can come on out. So just understanding how, what you all need. I know, I received an email from the chair of the EDA talking about there are a lot of things, and I think we touched on it already. There are things that come from this board that flow to you for your approval. That's why IDAs, EDAs are set up in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So what sort of, and I'm not, looking for an answer now, but I think, what is the best mechanism to get the heads up from this board as you all watch their meetings, is it going to throw something up? Hey, I need to learn something more about this. It's something for you all to think about. And I think we can talk about this at the next EDA meeting. Because just like, Robert's Rules of Orders, whenever I first came here, I was like, we're reading things twice. Well, that's Robert's Rules of Order. And it makes sense so you'd have time to digest it and then, and act on it at the next meeting. So nobody wants to be caught making the decision right then and there. It's a tough, tough predicament. So I'm open to suggestions. What works and what works best for Matt Smolnick may not work best for you. June Drake knows how she comprehends things and what comes to her. So these are going to need to be ideas from the EDA board. I'd be happy to, and I'm so excited to work with y'all. And I think at these next meetings or a couple of meetings, we'll start to flush this out. We'll start to open these lines of communication between the board.
So I would say near term, because we've had a lot of conversations, particularly like things like the grant program or some of the businesses coming in and saying, near term, I push every meeting to start talking strategy, because I think all of our decisions should flow from the strategy and the goals and objectives we set. So that to me would be a near term thing that would really help us document where we want to go forward and then hold us accountable, which would, I think, also help with communications, because we would have documented goals and objectives that could be assessed and reviewed and talked about. I think that would help guide some of the discussions as well. And then every decision we make would go back to what's our strategy and does this meet our strategy. So I'm kind of a strategy person, but that would help me a lot.
We've been working on that with Jude coming on. That is exactly every conversation. Where does this fit into our goals? Where does it fit into our budget? How is this strategic? So that kind of goes to that next bullet point, if we can move on to that. That was the whole reason why we had asked for a joint meeting with y'all in February timeframe, I believe it was, where the Board of Supervisors asked the EDA to do a strategic plan for economic development for the county. Of course, Mr. Minor left not long after that. We had questions regarding that strategic plan. We really don't know where you guys want to go strategically as a county. Didn't know whether or not it was too early for us to go and do an economic development authority strategic plan of what we think without knowing what you guys wanted to start with. I mean, 'cause I may want to put a Starbucks on every corner and think that's really important in that strategic plan, and you don't want Starbucks. Although I can't understand why, but so it would be really nice to know what you guys would like, or have you guys do a strategic plan from the county's perspective first.
Well, we can do that. So some of the things on tap for forward thinking is the second industrial park down by the school bus garage. One of the hampering things there is our water and sewer line, like a 1.5 million. But what hampers that even more is all that has to, we're trying to get rid of Perkins Corner. So it's, you can't put the horse before the cart. So, but that's in the plan. So when the comprehensive plan was done in the time, it's still pretty valid with the development areas. And the next areas that the development areas, we pretty much agreed on that. We disagreed on some of it. But that's the direction that we would like you all to be thinking about. So we want businesses that generate revenue, and we don't particularly want housetops.
I'll agree with you. So are you saying you do want an industrial park here, or you don't?
We do.
Okay, so that deal is actually dead. The landowner was not interested in selling, and the other one that we tried to put an option on didn't like the option price. So right now we have no deal on the table for either pieces of those properties, and really, that's how we left it when Mr. Minor left. So that wasn't something that we were personally working on, other than giving approval of what money we were willing to put forward on the option. So right now, there's no second industrial park anywhere on our plan. We're waiting for an economic director to come in and keep that back up.
But that's the will of the board, is they want the second.
We would like to too, but I
Right.
don't know
So
that it's
that's
going to be
where-
there.
that's where y'all will have to engage to try to get that, the one, property owner to see if they would have a different option. I don't know all the ins and outs of that.
Yeah, it is probably not something we want to discuss at this moment because I don't have the documents in front of me to share that with you.
Ms. Bender?
Yes, I'm just waiting to, because there's a little more information. Is I know when I have spoken to Drake and Scalmore about making sure that now that we have a county administrator having an actual mission, vision, and goal and a strategic plan for the board before we seek out for businesses and actually get public input. But one of the things that I've come across, and Mr. Mursavi, in our discussions on the service authority, there is some issues with the availability of connections in that area. So we need to make sure that we relook at including the tech and defense zone, which I was not a big fan of the whole chunk, but there actually is some issues with connectivity in the aquifer and the wells. So we really do need to look at it all before we go out and seek out other businesses, because there is some issues about being able to access water in the wells.
So you're right. That's a big problem for the entire county. And we've been discussing that. It's going to be in our face sooner than later. And so we're trying to get that problem solved. Ms. Bender, trying to get that problem solved. And so, but that all, just because we don't have the problem solved, doesn't mean you don't need to be working in that direction. So, is there any other, Mr. Brown, you have a comment?
So, yeah, I have a question, because, and this may be for the county attorney, but, so some of these discussions that could take place and what our intentions are, or ideas that we have, like once they're brought up here, then, and they're available to the public, then that changes the way that negotiations will transpire. So if in this meeting, a particular part of property or some intentions were put out there, whoever the owner is of that property or their realtor, the price could either go up or go down based on things that are transpired here. So at some point, those conversations would have to be held privately, just so the county doesn't get, so that those things don't happen. At what point does that happen, and how does that transpire?
Well, that's a good, go ahead, Mr.
So there are several exceptions under the FOIA law that allow you to go into a closed session to avoid exactly that. So if there's some prospective business that hadn't been announced, there's a section for that. If you're dealing with purchase or sale of property, there's an exception for that. There are a number of it, but once it becomes public, then you lose that ability in some cases, if that answers your question. So you can have those discussions in private so you don't prejudice your negotiating ability.
Right, I understand exactly what you're saying. The board says, hey, we want to buy 218, and then all the prices on 218 go up. But in the comp plan, it has areas where we want businesses and industrial, and that's the one that we spoke of is already in the public. They had an option did you have an option on 2?
Sorry, we had a discussion with the owners, Mr. Minor did, and they had changed their mind over time. So at right now, there is no conversations going on with them, nor would we have continued any conversations with them because that is not our expertise.
Well, what I worry about is that, like that document you all signed in December, that I don't think that you had enough time and exposure, and that you were put on the hot seat to sign that document. I think that you should have had plenty of time to do your due diligence. I mean, if you think you did, that's fine with me, but it seemed an awful rush to me.
I feel that I was very well versed at that point with all of that was presented there, that I did know what I was signing, and the board had met, and we had crunched numbers and made sense of what we were looking at, for everybody who was in our closed session. Did we have enough time in the back as we were handed a piece of paper of what all the incentives were? I don't think we got to see that long enough, but that really wasn't something that was in the performance agreement to start with. That was the other incentives that I guess were in another piece of paper and not part of the performance agreement itself. So as far as the performance agreement and what is in it, yeah, I had plenty of time to understand and digest what was in that, because most of that was set previously. You know, tax rates that were set in 2019. Yes, I was aware of that. I've been watching Board of Supervisors meetings since then and beyond. So yes, I understood what that was. And as far as the infrastructure grant and the way that it is set up, yes, I understood what that was all about. I just didn't know how they did the math to get to the number that they did, what the incentive was built off of. And I wanted to see the specific math line by line, because I'm an engineer, that's what we do. So I wanted to see that, but I did understand it.
Exactly, briefly.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gallimore mentioned other incentives, and I'm curious how did you know there were other incentives? How did somebody communicate that to you? Did you ever see any other incentives?
Ms. Lackey had a piece of paper that had things written on it. Like, since we can't write anything down, it had the water stuff on it, so how many gallons was 600,000 gallons, and then there were several other things on that piece of paper. But like I said, we briefly got to see that. I mean, I didn't get to.
Did they tell you that the company had promised to give water to the county? I'm just wondering how that came up, if there was.
It was on the piece of paper. I don't think she ever explained any of that. It was just on the piece of paper. But it had been an open meeting discussion that Mr. Payne, is that correct? Had presented to the Board of Supervisors, and most all of us actually either attend or watch the Board of Supervisors. That is how we have been getting our communication and knowing what was coming down the pipe, because we didn't want to be blindsided. So nobody really explained anything other than us asking questions about the math and the money. And Ms. Drake was sitting back there on a napkin doing some math, and then said, yes, I think this is a deal.
So, Mr. Collins, I
We don't
think,
want you to be blindsided.
yep, no,
No,
I think we can always be better, and having those conversations ahead of time is I think, the right way to go. What you need to know, at least from my perspective, is I don't just say yes. So if I wasn't comfortable, I would not have said yes. And then I also, because I am Mr. Sullen's appointment, talk with him as much as I can to understand kind of what's going on, if I missed a meeting or if I have questions about what happened at the meeting. But I think we can do it better, and I look forward to having those conversations to do that. So the other thing I wanted to point out on the strategic planning, one of the reasons I'm personally so excited about that, because I think there are grant opportunities in Commonwealth programs and things that we are not currently taking advantage of, and I think if we had a strategy, so we could go out and start looking for some of that. We could start leveraging some of that. So that's the other thing that I'm really excited about, because I believe, you know, King George's has got some opportunities to leverage some of those programs if we're planning forward. So again, I think
that's the man right there.
yeah, I think Mr. Smolnick will be an interesting addition to those conversations.
Do you have any comments, Mr. Sullivan? I think we're not on this. We can come back around. David? Got anything else?
I don't really think so now. I was a bit lost about why there was so much discussion from the EDA board regarding the performance agreement, and because I didn't know that they were involved in the performance agreement and in that negotiation, so I was a bit lost in that. But I understand the path forward is our rep is gonna be,
Go ahead, Mr. Stewart. The state statute that authorizes these infrastructure grants, and basically, the developers of the data centers get the majority of their taxes back, or they don't have to pay it as a result of the state statute. And there are various grants associated with how much infrastructure they put in. But the statute actually requires both the county to enter into a performance agreement, and then the EDA to also enter into a performance agreement independent of the county. And that's why it had to be with it.
So Ms. Gallimore had to sign, we voted on whether or not she should be signing on behalf of the EDA. And in the performance agreement are words like EDA obligation, EDA responsibility.
thank you.
All right, anybody, Mr. Spelling?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the question you asked earlier about the strategic plan and what do we want to go after. And I feel like the conversation tended towards mostly larger business, industry, and stuff like that. And I've shared this with Mr. Smolnick and most of the folks, but I just want to get it on record again. I still want us to go after small businesses. I don't want to forget about that, places to eat, activities for our kids to do, places to shop, cultural enrichment, things that, make King George, a better place to live and enjoyable for our residents. Those are the kind of things I want to go after, in addition to the large businesses. Yeah, the large businesses pay the bills. The small businesses make it a good place to live.
So, but can we get the county to do a strategic plan first, to plan what the county wants, or do you want us to go forward with the request you made in February for us to do an EDA strategic plan, and then you'll do your county plan?
So we're gonna, pawn that off on Mr. Smallman. So, he is our representative. So you all can work that out with him.
So we have that on the record right now that we're off the hook. We're doing that for the time being.
Is in there?
I want to make sure the county does theirs first before we have the EDA go off, because we need to finally have a clear mission, vision, and goals and a plan, and we need to involve the citizens also in that. Because there's one thing for all, I guess, how many people on your board? 7, correct? 7. So there's one thing for 12 of us to make a decision, but there's 27,000 people in King George that also have to have a say in what kind of businesses that they want to see. And, I just want to make sure we do that first before we go off on an economic plan.
Right. Well, so as far as the type of businesses, some of the zoning ordinances, will not allow certain businesses, but the citizens are not interested in. Is there any other comments before we close this?
So, but I think part of this is something that we need to put in writing for you guys too, is part of what we're looking to do is build King George with an economy that supports itself, and we're not leaning heavily just on Diagram, or we're not looking on Amazon to come rescue us. And part of what we've been doing is we've been looking for Amazon to just come rescue us, right? I mean, that's been kind of the thing, and that's not what we want to do. And part of that is building around, like, maybe it's more of a tourism spot. Maybe it's, I pitched the idea, we've been talking about bringing an amphitheater. It's like Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube was built in the middle of nowhere. A place where people will come to King George, stay in hotels, spend their money, and then go back to where they came from after a couple of days. That's what we want. It's Lake Caledon, and having a place where people come in and visit, with like a brewery and camp and stay, and then go back to where they came from. King George is a nice place to. So rooftops isn't part of our economic development plan, because that's been the issue. Is we thought, in past boards have thought that is the way to solve the issue, with more rooftops. That's all I heard when I ran was more rooftops. The State Service Authority, we did more rooftops. So we would have built, I'd like to build Main Street King George. A place where there's shops and there's a lawyer office over top of them, and whatever, a place where people can go and go visit. And there's a Christmas tree in the middle of it that people go for a lighting. It's an actual thing that we do, So these are things that our eyes are on. These are things we can do, but we want to build like our own little economy where we are self-sufficient and everything else is a plus to us. But I'm not looking to be rescued by anybody, and I'm definitely not, if you could tell, I'm not looking to be taken advantage of by anybody either, you know, and that's been kind of like, well, we think we can get some more out of certain things, and I'll leave it at that. But that is kind of where we're going, and we're going to put some of this stuff down, but I haven't got one person in King George who picked me for saying amphitheater in King George. Everyone's like, man, that's a great idea. And I think of the one that's in Charlottesville on the mall. The perfect type size. It's somewhere, and, you know, and I talked to Nick, and Nick was working on that right before he left about what we can do, and I've passed it on to Matt. Like, that's a higher up thing to me right now. And, you know, anyway, that's all I wanted to add.
So one of the things that has been on my personal agenda, Ms. Bender can definitely support this, and so can everybody else who hears me when a landowner walks into my vicinity, is having a fairground that actually has a concert facility. And, you know, I've talked with Mr. Clark about that, and anybody who owns land that doesn't really live in the county has gotten letters from me asking them to donate in their family's name to have an area. I do understand we do have a small fairground here that is in the county's possession, but it's not large enough for the things that I had envisioned. And then I have shared that vision with multitudes. So if you're interested in coming in with me as a private citizen, this is not from the EDA, although the EDA did give me permission to. Look, my heart rate has already gone off several times, so but yes, I would love that. It is not something that would be paid for by the county. I want property donated. So anybody watching, have 50 acres, bring it on. But this is something that would be beneficial for the community. So.
Already? Is there anything else? I mean, go ahead.
Was there any other infrastructure ideas that you needed to hear about?
You know, just no specific infrastructure ideas. I put this on here just so we start thinking about, I know we're going through, there's a $5 million VDH grant to go ahead, and there's a lot of infrastructure improvements that will be made here. The reason I want to put this on there is just to put it on everybody's radar to think about unique ways. I know Mr. Stroud, you mentioned Purple Line a couple times. You know, how can that benefit us? You know, you dig a trench, you put everything in first time. You don't want to come back and do it a second time. So just want, you know, everybody to you know, get creative, think outside the box, and how can we utilize and reutilize some of our water here in the county, because water is going to be the limiting factor. And, you know, the placement of the water lines, sewer lines, and possible purple lines will dictate, you know, where and how much development comes to the county. That's why I put it on there.
All righty. I'm going to go ahead and close for the Board of Supervisors. You got something else, Mr. Brown?
No, I guess my only comment based on Matt's and also on Bill's and Ms. Gallimore is that the strategic plan that's been out there and some of the ideas with the last economic development areas is that, you know, and I can defend this, but it's lacked a strategic, there may have been a strategic view, but the problem was it wasn't executable. You can come up with a vision, you come up with a mission, but you also need to come up with an execution plan. So if you come up with something, and I'm all about innovation, I love innovation, I love thinking, I love coming up with ideas, but they need to be able to be executed smartly, efficiently, effectively, and within a reasonable amount of time. So that falls in line with Mr. Stollen's comments regarding small businesses. You know, and if there are meetings or something talking about small businesses and things, you know, I wouldn't mind being involved in that, especially, you know, I've heard people talking about educating people and talking to people about starting small businesses and things. And, you know, I love small business. Those things get me really motivated. But I don't like building false expectations with people so that they go out and start a small business, end up in debt. 2 years later, they're bankrupt, you know, and then we end up with an empty building and these problems. So we need to educate people in the reality of small business. And whenever we start to grow the accounting and things, and whenever people say, well, we grow up by small business has a very high failure rate. So if you're planning on growing your county and growing our wealth, a small business is a plan to fail. I'm a small business guy. I love small business. But your plan isn't based on a plan to fail, we need a plan to succeed. So, and we can have that, and I think we do, but we don't have it concisely in a document or in a way that, you know, everybody can see that. And some of it's for obvious reasons, because we've already discussed it, but that's all I got to say about that.
All ready? I'm gonna go ahead and close the Board of Supervisors meeting.
EDA meeting, would you like to make a motion to adjourn, please? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. You're close. Thank you.
Well, I guess I better vote too. All those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
I'm gonna close now.